On va démarrer cette dernière conférence de la journée, du deuxième jour du salon, avec mon invitée Catherine Conway, fondatrice de Unpackaged. Bonjour Catherine.
Bonjour.
Voilà, pour la petite anecdote, Catherine et moi, on se connaît depuis 6 ans, c'est-à-dire dès le démarrage de la fondation de Réseau Vrac, de l'association. Alors Catherine vous racontera un petit peu son histoire. Elle a démarré le vrac, le zéro déchet, bien avant 2016, bien avant Réseau Vrac. Mais en tout cas, ça fait depuis ce petit moment qu'on se connaît. On a commencé avec des visios. Voilà, on a pu se voir une fois à Paris, c'était il y a 2 ans, je crois. Quand tu es venue à Paris. Et du coup, à titre personnel et au nom de la filière du vrac, c'est un immense plaisir de pouvoir la recevoir ici en France. Elle est venue de Londres et d'autant plus pour nous présenter en avant-première pour le Salon du Vrac un immense projet de logistique zéro déchet au Royaume-Uni. Donc voilà, pour toutes ces raisons, je suis très heureuse de t'accueillir, Catherine. Tu veux peut-être dire un petit mot en introduction avant de présenter Unpackaged ?
Bonjour, j'aurais aimé faire ma présentation en français, mais j'espère que vous me pardonnez que je ne peux faire pas. C'est un honneur d'être invité ici parce que la France est un leader dans le vrac et le zéro déchet, mais je parle en anglais. Merci.
Voilà, donc la présentation aura lieu en anglais. On va avoir 3 parties. Comme ça, j'annonce un peu. Donc, une première partie consacrée à Unpackaged, l'histoire, le démarrage, le marché anglais. Catherine va nous présenter un peu l'état d'avancée du marché anglais. Et enfin, pour aboutir au projet de Refill Coalition. Tu peux commencer.
Lovely. So just with a bit of history, so I set up Unpackaged in 2006, so 16 years ago. I think we were officially the first modern zero waste store. And really, I just took the problem that I could see of single-use packaging and married it to an old-fashioned way of shopping, which was in vrac, in bulk. So we started with a market stall in 2006. I had my first shop with less grey hair in 2007, where we had 700 products in bulk. And then we moved on to a second shop in 2012. We went a bit wrong in 2012 because I added on a restaurant that was meant to be a zero-waste restaurant, which didn't quite work. And at that point, I kind of wondered what I was going to do. And I was just looking around, and some of the shops in Europe were setting up. There was, the odd shop in the UK. But I could still see that there was this huge problem of single-use plastic packaging. So at that point, I decided to go into business with other people. So I thought, if I want to achieve scale, then I need to go and work with other supermarkets. So that was how our partnership with Planet Organic was born. So they are a chain of 15 organics stores in London. And with them, we developed with Berzerber the scale that you see there, which was the first zero-waste self-service touchscreen that a customer could do themselves, where they could tear off their own container, because before that you were never able to do that on a scale. So that's now become the standard for all of the scale companies. So we started with cleaning products and dry goods, and then we moved on to body care and things like that. And then since then we've started working with the independent sector. So this was a unit that was designed to be able to go into any butcher, baker, delicatessen to start selling zero waste. And then we started working with the supermarkets. So Waitrose is one of the biggest supermarkets in the UK, and we helped them with their first project, so Unpacked, in 2019. So it was an 11-week trial, and during the trial we removed 130,000 pieces of single-use plastic packaging from the waste stream. Which represented a 98% reduction in single-use plastic packaging, and about 1.5 tons of packaging was avoided. But the main point was really to see if their customers wanted to do it, and the customer feedback was incredible. So they've kept it in, they've expanded it to more stores. Since then, we've worked with Marks & Spencer's, who's another very large supermarket, and they did some really interesting customer research during their project. So they found that 25 out of the 44 products were selling at higher volumes than the pre-packs, the single-use. 75% of their shoppers are trying to consciously reduce their plastic packaging. And 23% are specifically seeking out retailers that are offering packaging free. So what we're trying to do is create an evidence base within these supermarkets that this is what consumers want, and to try and use that to get more retailers to implement. We also worked on Abel & Cole, who are a very large fruit and veg and grocery delivery company to home. So we developed this system for them, and the plastic pots were deliberately designed to be ugly, with the idea that customers would put them into their own jars at home so that we could get them back and keep turning them around, because it fitted with how they do it. So this is now a model that's been adopted by other home delivery companies in the UK. So aside from that, we also do research. So really what I've learned over 16 years is that there isn't very good policy. You know, you've worked a lot on the policy and the laws that we need in place. So we've done a lot of research. So we did a paper for Greenpeace where we helped them articulate a position for retailers and brands of how much of their packaging should be reusable and refillable. Currently, if you look at all of the biggest global brands, less than 3% of their packaging is reusable or refillable. My calculation said it needs to be more like 40%. In the end, in this paper, we settled on 25%. But that's a huge shift from where we are to where we need to be. We have something called the UK Plastics Pact, which is the biggest voluntary agreement amongst all of the big companies in the UK. It's similar to the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, the global commitment. So we help them do a consultation as to whether they should have a target for reuse and refill within their targets. Unsurprisingly, they all said no, because if you ask the people who it's going to affect most whether they should do something difficult, they say no. And now we're currently working with the Rethink Plastic Alliance in the EU, working on how we can use reuse as part of the just transition away from fossil fuels and into more meaningful green economy roles. So that's really what we've been doing for the last 16 years.
And that's a lot. So you pioneered the UK market. Can you tell us where you are now?
Yep, so we, I guess, have now taken a step up and are trying to work on bigger projects, but I thought it would be useful to show you where the UK is. So badly is where we are. So after the US, we are the worst emitters of plastic waste in the world. And this is our plastic packaging footprint. So what I found amazing was that the UK Plastics Pact had never once calculated how many pieces of single-use plastic packaging are put on the market. So I don't know if you guys have a figure for France. But we did some calculations. I didn't do the calculations. Another organisation did the calculations. And we think it's 56.5 billion individual sales units. So that represents 114 billion packaging components. So if you have a water bottle, you've got a lid, you've got a bottle, and you've got a label, and you might have a tamper-proof seal. And really, when you're talking about plastic pollution, it doesn't matter whether it's a bottle or a lid. So you actually have to think of the amount of pieces of packaging going onto the market. And that's 896,000 tons in weight. That doesn't include the bit that the consumer never sees, which is all of the transit packaging, so all the secondary and tertiary packaging, a lot of which is single-use, and also all of our carrier bags. So we now have a ban on single-use carrier bags. But the problem is that everybody now uses bags for life, which are thicker plastic. So less bags are being put on the market, but more plastic is being put on the market. So it hasn't worked. And then just as a reminder that globally, the top 10 FMCG companies are putting 9 million metric tons of plastic onto the market each year, and that's predicted to grow. So this is not a problem that any of us are really solving just yet, unless we can get these big ones to change. But in terms of consumer demand, so these are all of our main supermarkets, Tesco, Lidl, Sainsbury's, Asda, Waitrose, M&S and Aldi. Across all of the age ranges and across all of the money that people have to spend on groceries, you're seeing between 65 and 85% of people saying that they would try a refill station if it opened in a supermarket. So once again, this is the evidence base that we've got to create to get these retailers to start implementing reuse. So just as a quick overview of our laws, we have sort of three main areas. So we've got something called a 25-year environment plan, which Boris keeps saying is the best in the world. I don't think it is, but he keeps saying it. Within that, we have something called a waste and resources strategy, where we are working towards targets of zero avoidable waste by 2050. But you'll notice the problem in the sentence is working towards and avoidable. So, you know, our problem is that business has so much power in the UK that they lobby and they lobby and they lobby against any of these targets actually being meaningful. And apparently we are eliminating all avoidable plastic waste by the end of 2042, which I very much doubt is going to happen at the rate we're going. The interesting bit, though, that I do think is an advance is we have the Environment Act that came in last year. And what they're creating is what's called a polluter pays framework, and I think this is probably the direction of travel across Europe, across globally, which is effectively, if you profit from the waste that you're making, you have to pay for the cleanup. So traditionally in the UK, the businesses that have made the money out of the packaging waste contribute only 10% of the cost of the waste disposal. And our local authorities, our local government, there is no money. The money needs to be spent on adult social care and things that are important. So we have to really start changing the framework. So we have, similar to France, we have what's called extended producer responsibility, which is coming in. We've got deposit return scheme, which is coming in. And we've got something called the plastic packaging tax. So if you put single-use plastic packaging on the market, if it has less than 30% recycled content, you get charged a £200 fine per tonne of the plastic. It's probably not high enough because all of the businesses lobbied to lower it, but at least it's a starting point. So in its place, what we have are voluntary agreements, which just aren't going far or fast enough. So you've got the Plastics Pact target, which all of the major retailers and brands are signed up to. These are the 4 targets. So they eliminate problematic or unnecessary single-use packaging. So that's things like stirrers, cotton buds, all of those kind of things. Then they've got 100% of plastic packaging to be reusable, recyclable, or compostable by 2025. Now, the problem with that is that everybody, instead of saying 100% of our packaging should be reusable, recyclable, or compostable following the principles of the waste hierarchy, i.e. getting to reusable, they think that if they go 100% recyclable, they've hit the target. So once again, that's a problem. And then we've obviously got targets on recycling. And I just want to compare that to Greenpeace. So this is what Greenpeace are saying, which is that we have to cut all single-use plastic by 50% by 2025, and at least 25% of that needs to be met by reuse or refill. So where we need to be and where we are is hugely different. So I was just going to finish this bit off with just a bit of, what the problems are for business and what I think the solutions are. So the challenge is really with the solutions that we've got, because they're very manual, at the minute there is just far too much staff handling, which is just really, really inefficient. So all of the bulk and the vrac, it all involves washing manually in store, and it's just costing them far too much money, which means if you've got a brand like Waitrose or M&S that their customers expect them to be doing sustainable things, then they might pay the money to do it, but Lidl, Aldi, the discounters, they're never going to implement it because it's just far too expensive. So what I say to people is when you're designing innovation in vrac or in zero waste, you've got to design for scale. You've got to design for what this needs to get to. I think also with consumers, we've got to convert their willingness to action, but actually we've got to get solutions out there. So all of these big businesses say, oh, well, consumers don't want it. Well, you haven't offered it to them. If you'd offered it to them and they said no, okay, fine. But there aren't enough solutions out there, so we just need to get more out there. And the other massive problem we've got is they all want a business case. They want to know that it'll be profitable, that it's worth their time. Until we get the solutions out there, we can't prove that. And the initial solutions cost more money because they're new, and that's what happens with innovation. So when we work with our clients, what we're trying to prove is that actually if they lead in this space, then they will be rewarded for being leaders. So in terms of the solution, I think all brands should have ambitious public targets with a roadmap of how they're going to get to 2025 and 2030. They need to allocate budget. None of this stuff can be done cheaply. And they need to move faster with innovation. So traditionally, a big brand like Coca-Cola would have a 2-year R&D, stage gate thing. And, the customers will have moved on by that point. So they need to move faster. Collaboration. So manufacturers, retailers, and the supply chain have all got to work together. It's the same supply chain supplying all of these. So you need to work together and collaborate while still maintaining your competitive positions. We also need investment in infrastructure. So we need shared regional washing and logistics because it makes no sense for each supermarket to have a different washing system, and obviously there's some solutions here that are working on that. And then we need increased regulation and legislation. So our government in particular hates any form of regulation on business. Actually, if you speak to the businesses, they're asking for regulation because then everybody has a level playing field and everybody has to, to work the same.
They never move otherwise.
Exactly. So that's really where we are.
Peut-être un petit commentaire par rapport à la France. On fait tout à fait les mêmes constats que toi et il y a déjà de nombreuses, en tout cas des débuts de collaboration, de coopétition, comme on dit en France, entre plusieurs marques pour partager justement cet aspect d'innovation, de mutualisation, d'aller ensemble vers le vrac et sur les aspects effectivement de pouvoir avoir des notions de circularité des emballages amont et de prix. Également en France, on a travaillé avec un projet de hub vrac, je t'en avais parlé. On essaye d'aller aussi vers une V2, une deuxième édition. Et le nerf de la guerre dans le vrac, c'est exactement ce que tu as dit, c'est comment on trouve des modèles économiques rentables qui, en même temps, satisfont l'environnement, c'est-à-dire les objectifs de réduction des déchets d'emballage jetable, de gaspillage alimentaire et de parcours client. Comme tu l'as dit, si c'est compliqué, le client n'ira pas. Donc, comment on s'adapte et on arrive à adresser ces différents freins, mais qui, pour moi, peuvent au contraire créer des vraies opportunités de business. C'est sous la contrainte, souvent, qu'on innove le plus, c'est ce qu'on dit. Et là, je crois que c'est le projet que tu vas nous partager. C'est comment vous avez tenu compte de tout ça et vous allez aboutir. C'est déjà lancé, je crois. It is already launched, the project.
So we're working on the technology right now and we will launch at the end of this year.
D'accord, donc à la fin de 2022, en avant-première, le projet de Refill Coalition au UK.
Right. So what we worked out was that actually a lot of the savings could be made within the supply chain that the customers would never actually see. So what we launched back in the beginning of the pandemic was the Refill Coalition. So we've been working on it for 2 years. And what we have are 4 major supermarkets from the UK, and Ocado are home delivery, direct to consumers. And then CHEP, who are a very large logistics company, global logistics company. And we are working with our wonderful partners, so Berry, Beserber, Jean Boutet, and Trade Fixtures, who are both here today. And what we are trying to do is reimagine what the bulk supply chain could look like. So the problem, as everybody knows at the minute, is with the current gravity bins and the scoop bins, is they've all got to be washed in store. So in France, you have some service which takes them away and washes them and brings them back. In the UK, we don't have that service, so everybody washes them in store, which is expensive and takes too much time. With the UK laws, we also have to have these big cleaning stations at the back of every store, which cost about £30,000 to put in, which means lots and lots of places won't ever put them in. So that's to do the washing. The customer experience isn't necessarily great. We could be improving the customer experience. And also, it's not zero waste because the products are coming in and the colleague in store is filling them from a 25-kilo sack or a 5-kilo sack. So yes, there's less packaging, but it's not zero waste yet. So the problem is that no single brand or retailer can solve this, and this is why Unpackaged sits in the middle to try and get this coalition going. So what we've done is we've reimagined the hopper, as it were, and as you can see, we've taken off the front, which is the dispense, and Isia from Trade Fixtures is here, so she can talk about any detail if we need any. So what we've done is we've created effectively a vessel. Now, this is designed for the supply chain. So this is optimized for the supply chain, and we've estimated that it will go at least 5 years around a supply chain. So the way the system works is CHEP manage the vessels. They go to a large, say, cornflake manufacturer. They all get filled in. And the really important part of this system is the standardization of the aperture, the opening that's going in. So then the supplier sends the vessels out on a pallet. So in the UK, mainly goods go on a pallet to a distribution center, and then they go on these roll cages and come through to the store. The colleague in the store fits the nozzle, the dispenser, on the front and pops it on the shelf. Customer can come and refill, and then the empty ones are just put on a roll cage and sent back through. Then you can see that CHEP are going to wash them in the service centre, and then the whole system starts again. So we were given a small amount of funding, and we took this concept around all of the major retailers, brands, so Unilever, P&G, Coca-Cola, all of the large brands, and everybody agrees that it's the standardization for the filling and the washing that is the really important part. So Ocado, because they are home delivery, they're direct to home, they've got a different model, which is a pre-fill, so the vessel will arrive full of product already, but the interesting bit is it will have the same aperture for filling and cleaning, which means that even though it's a smaller size, because the customer's going to have it at home, it still fits within a standardized system. So we've done a lot of modeling, and effectively this vessel is optimized for the supply chain because it fits on the pallet. So if you see here, stand up a second, when you're transporting traditional bottles, you've got can be anything from sort of 10 to 40% air. So when you suddenly optimize and put it on a pallet, you're delivering 20 to 40% more product per pallet. That suddenly massively reduces your costs and reduces your environmental impacts as well. So this is how it's all been designed. And then obviously in store, we're replacing all of the putting products on shelves, so you're saving costs there. And then for the refill models, we're saving all of the washing and refilling in-house. So we have done this modeling at SKU level detail, and we're finding that the cost of running our refill versus the traditional vrac at the minute, it's 25% of the cost. So that's how much cheaper it's going to cost to operate it. So suddenly you're talking about being able to pass those savings on to consumers, and you're suddenly talking about the retailers saving money. And as I was saying to you, it's a very different conversation. Before, I used to go in and say, sustainability, we've got to do this, it's the right thing. Now you say, oh, you could save X amount of money, and suddenly the supply chain people really start listening to you. So we've done some life cycle analysis. So this is just a very simple calculation that a 19-litre vessel is 15 kilos, which is 30 bags of rice. So that's how much you can start saving in terms of the packaging. Obviously, we are moving up the waste hierarchy because we've got reduction, because we've reduced all of that single-use packaging through the supply chain, and we're promoting reuse. We've done life cycle analysis, so we compared our vessel to single-use rice, breakfast cereal, shower gel, laundry liquid, vegetable in a plastic bottle, vegetable in a glass bottle, and on almost every indicator it performs better environmentally. And the trial that we're going to run that starts at the end of this year is we're anticipating we can remove 2.5 million units just in the trial, but the whole point of the trial really is to prove that this thing can work and it can work in scale. But the really, really interesting bit, and the thing that I'm most proud of, is that what we're trying to do, I probably have to stand up again. What we're trying to do is split the system apart and effectively run an open source industry standard with the idea that this is an open market. So we've got an exclusivity agreement for the next 2 years with our partners because everybody's working really hard and investing in it. But the point will be is once it becomes a standard, the interoperability between all of these systems will be published, and any existing company within the supply chain that already does POS or already does labeling or has fixtures can come and compete, and we can all use the same system. Because if we don't, then we will fragment into different systems, and you'll suddenly find that all of the big brands and all of the big retailers will have different systems for different brands and different locations, and it's just never going to work in terms of achieving the scale that we need to achieve. So that's the bit that I'm really excited about, because it shows that you can cooperate, but everybody can still maintain their competitive advantage. And the really important thing is that retailers don't want it to all look the same. So if I came along with a whole system with the hardware and the software, and this is how it has to look, Waitrose doesn't want it to look like Lidl, they don't want it to look like Tesco, they probably don't, Carrefour doesn't want it to look like Intermarché, everybody wants it to look different. And with this system, you can have more or less technology, you can have more detailed or less detailed POS kit, so it allows all of the retailers to personalize it, and that's why they're most interested in this system. So that's really what we're doing. You can find us Refill Coalition or refillcoalition.com, and we've got a sign-up email on there, so if you just pop your email on there, then we can keep you updated with how we're getting on.
Merci beaucoup Catherine, c'est incroyable. Bon, là, on est vraiment à un stade très avancé de la réflexion, hein. On s'était parlé il y a quoi, un an? We talked about that like 1 year ago, or 1 year and a half. Et je vois du coup les avancées depuis. Est-ce que vous avez des questions?